Welcome to the Bare Metal Cyber C-Risk Prepcast. This series helps you prepare for the exam with focused explanations and practical context. Domain 4 is where technology and risk finally converge in practical, measurable ways. It is the part of the C-Risk framework that moves from planning and strategy into control implementation, system operations, and measurable effectiveness. This domain is about how IT, security, and risk functions intersect in daily business, especially when continuity and resilience are on the line. It covers the technical realities of change management, incident handling, recovery planning, and data protection, but always through the lens of business risk. The exam questions from Domain 4 frequently involve applied governance, meaning that the control or solution must work in real-world operational conditions, not just look good on paper. This domain expects C-Risk candidates to demonstrate that they understand how to integrate controls into systems, processes, and user behavior. It is the bridge between intent and execution. A key part of Domain 4 involves IT operations and their role in delivering business resilience. Controls like change management and asset management are critical for maintaining visibility and preventing unauthorized modifications that could introduce risk. When these controls work properly, organizations can trace every change back to a request, assess the impact, and roll back if necessary. Problem and incident management help reduce the frequency and duration of outages, and they ensure that root causes are identified and fixed, not just symptoms. Metrics such as mean time to detect, mean time to respond, and overall incident trends help assess whether operations are improving or degrading. On the exam, questions often describe an incident or outage, and the best answers will close the loop from detection to resolution, showing that controls are not just deployed but also monitored and refined. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other podcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. System development and architecture decisions shape how well controls align with risk. Enterprise architecture offers structure and repeatability, helping risk teams see where exposures may form and how security fits into the broader technology stack. The system development lifecycle must embed risk thinking early, what is often referred to as shifting left. This means adding security requirements, threat models, and control placement during the requirements and design phases. When systems are built with security from the beginning, the organization spends less time remediating later and stays better aligned with compliance needs. Late-stage security additions, especially during testing or deployment, often indicate that planning failed. On the exam, if you see a scenario where controls were added just before go-live, it likely reflects a maturity problem. Strong answers recognize secure architecture as a foundation, not an add-on. Business continuity and disaster recovery planning are essential parts of operational resilience. The business impact analysis helps define recovery time and recovery point objectives for IT systems, which then guide how continuity and disaster recovery plans are built. These plans must be tested regularly to confirm they work, maintained under version controls so updates are tracked, and have clearly assigned roles for execution during crises. And business continuity goes beyond systems. It must also include communications, people, and manual processes to maintain operations. On the exam, expect scenarios where a plan failed during an outage or was not tested, and the best answers will address this as a control maturity gap. Look for questions that emphasize preparation, practice, and integration with enterprise risk strategy. Information security is a constant presence throughout Domain 4, and C-Risk professionals must understand how to align technical controls with business priorities. The confidentiality, integrity, and availability triad remains the foundation of security thinking, and each control should be measured by how it preserves these attributes. Frameworks like ISO 27011, NIST's CSF, and the CIS controls offer structure for building, assessing, and improving security programs. Security controls must be applied in context. This means they must match the classification of the data, comply with relevant regulations, and support the operational role of the system. Security is not limited to firewalls or antivirus tools. It plays a role in system design, change management, incident response, and audit preparation. On the exam, look for questions that test whether security has been integrated throughout the system lifecycle, not just bolted on after the fact. Data lifecycle management and privacy protection continue to grow in importance, both in compliance and in risk governance. Organizations must manage data from the moment it is created until it is securely destroyed. Classification is central to this process, as it dictates how data is accessed, retained, encrypted, and deleted. Privacy principles must also be respected, including user consent, data minimization, access rights, and secure processing. C-risk professionals must ensure that controls are mapped to these principles and that retention policies are clear and enforceable. On the exam, you may encounter scenarios involving unclear retention practices, missing consent documentation, or unclassified sensitive data. The best answers will reflect full lifecycle governance, from intake to destruction, supported by layered and role-based controls. Monitoring and metrics transform assumptions into actionable insights. Key risk indicators help detect changes in the threat landscape or early signs of control failure. Key performance indicators track how well systems or teams are performing against goals. Key control indicators show whether safeguards are operating as expected. Dashboards and scorecards are useful tools for presenting this information to stakeholders. But the underlying indicators must be clearly defined, assigned to owners, and reviewed regularly. Effective metrics go beyond counting units. They offer insight into trends, anomalies, and potential gaps. On the exam, choose metrics that help you detect meaningful risk exposure or declining control effectiveness, rather than those that simply track activity without context. Security awareness, training, and human behavior are part of Domain 4 because users are both risk vectors and control assets. Training programs must be frequent, updated, and role-specific to reflect real operational risks. Simulation tools such as phishing campaigns or physical access drills help reinforce key behaviors and make risks tangible. Behavioral metrics such as phishing click rates or incident reporting trends can help measure improvement. Human error remains one of the most persistent sources of security failures, and C-risk professionals must treat user behavior as a domain for control planning, not just an afterthought. Governance must ensure that training programs are tracked, reviewed, and enforced with accountability. On the exam, awareness scenarios often involve mistraining, poor customization, or lack of measurement. Strong answers focus on consistency, relevance, and documentation. Emerging technologies introduce both risk and opportunity, and Domain 4 expects C-risk professionals to evaluate both sides before adoption. Cloud computing, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and robotic process automation change how data is handled, how controls are deployed, and how visibility is maintained. Before adopting any new technology, organizations must conduct due diligence that includes architecture review, integration planning, and control compatibility. Emerging tech often arrives with incomplete standards or unclear regulation, which makes governance and foresight even more important. Proactive review, not reactive correction, is the mindset expected on the exam. If a scenario describes a breach, failure, or compliance issue involving new technology, ask whether the technology was evaluated, controlled, and documented before being deployed. Look for answers that reflect structured adoption, not ad hoc deployment. To succeed on Domain 4 exam questions, you must think beyond simple control lists and consider how solutions fit into the bigger picture. Ask whether a proposed control preserves confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Determine whether it aligns with the organization's risk appetite and supports business continuity. Many questions will focus on governance failures that manifest in technical processes, such as untested recovery plans or undocumented changes. Do not assume that more security is always better. Instead, look for answers that reflect purpose-fit solutions with clear integration. Be prepared to reason through scenarios involving architecture, disaster recovery, development cycles, privacy enforcement, and user behavior. The best answers will show a balance between technical practicality, governance alignment, and long-term risk management strategy. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Bare Metal Cyber C-Risk Prepcast. For more episodes, tools, and study support, visit us at baremetalcyber.com.